Episode 16.
In last episodes we discussed constantly varied training or testing.
Yeah.
And we touched a little bit on true variance. So what does it mean and what's the difference?
Yeah, that's basically the backbone of how I try to design our competition, our outside the box competition, is what I call true variance. And I like to think of it as for people in terms of a spectrum, right? And just very broadly, right? Very broadly, very basic. You think of like truly enduring, easy, light, continuous, long over here. And you think explosive, powerful, potential over here. And then you got a whole bunch of stuff inside of that, right? And that's one frame of reference. And then you think of characteristics like strength, speed, stamina, endurance, whatever. So the way I try to design the events is such that each event is both predictive of that quality on its own, which whatever we're testing. So it's predictive of the test itself, obviously. But then it's predictive of other things you're not going to test because you don't have time. So that's part of what I call predictive fitness testing. So you like to use, you pick the best example of everything as opposed to just picking something that is possible but then doesn't reference back to the actual thing you're trying to get. You want to pick something in here that gets most everything out here. But within that, you're not going to get the weird stuff, right? And it's like we discussed before, you only get so many things to do per weekend, so you got to be smart about it. So what I like to call true variance is that each event is truly unique and is truly different, and you're limited by a different thing each event. There's a different thing that will limit you. And by a different thing, it's a different characteristics, not the same muscle group over and over, not like arm strength. So like, for example, if you look at, just look at the first event of the regionals this year with Randy, right? For most people, you're limited by grip. It's your grip strength and grip endurance. The next event's Tommy V. A lot of it is coming down to grip and pulling endurance, right? And then again, you have and then you have the handstand walk where that's just ridiculous anyway, so let's move on to something else. Then you have the handstand push-up event where it's like, okay, for the average intermediate girl, they're limited because of arm strength. The last event, the muscle-ups, they're limited because of arm strength. Even the Tommy V, they're limited because of their arm strength. So just because the movements are different, just because the time frames are different, doesn't mean it's actually different, right? Yeah. For certain people, it's the same shit over and over, and it's not different. So within that, I try to create events where each event is truly different for every single person, because you're going to allow them to feel. You're trying to provide the same feeling to each individual on each event. That's the goal of it.
Same response.
Yeah, you're trying to get the dose response from a certain event on each individual, which is difficult to do. You can't get it on everybody, right? And that's why fitness testing for large populations is typically done on really simple things, right? So that you can get everybody getting the same thing out of it. And just for example, last year we had our event. The first thing was like a 3-rep max clean and jerk. It's a strength power event for everybody, right? And then we have the first event on Sunday morning last year was a 1-rep max deadlift. It's a strength grinding, total body movement for everybody. The last event that we had last year was a 30-minute time cap, started with a 3K run, and it was all easy movements to finish out. It was breathing limited for everybody. They just couldn't breathe. The other event that day was jumping. It's an athletic, you have to time it, you got to jump over a rope hurdle, and you got to time it. And it's not the same as the deadlift, because the deadlift's a maximal load, slow, high tension, grinding movement for an absolute value. Then you have the jump, which is a relative test of power and speed and agility and athleticism, really. And then first event on Saturday morning, we had 1 mile run, which is it's a relative test of aerobic power because it's you and your body weight and it's in the most functional movement you have. So when you go through the events that we would have for the event, for our competition, each event is going to be unique and they're going to truly be different and they're going to feel different based on the intensity that we're going to try to get out of you for the event and based on the correct selection of movements and loading for the event to make sense of it. So that when people leave at the end of the weekend, they look back at the event and each event had a unique issue for them. And it wasn't the same thing over and over.
Yeah. Like just upper body strength.
Just up, you can't, There's no way you're going to go through the events and go, the reason I lost is because my upper body strength isn't good enough. Because there will be several events where you do not have to hang from a bar or from rings or have to touch your head to the floor doing a push-up, right? There will be probably only one event that has that. So 8 out of the 9 events will not be limited by that.
And the positive aspect of true variance in terms of results is that like the scores, in my opinion, scores can be much closer to each other, of much more number of competitors.
Yeah, and it's like we talked about before. When you have events like that, I like to look at it and go, I don't think people should win the event because they're short. I don't think people should lose the event because they're tall.
Yeah.
Or vice versa. Like people shouldn't win the event because they're tall. They shouldn't win it because they're short. Like you should try to create an event. You should try to create a scenario where it's almost acceptable for everybody.
Yeah, especially if you don't have weight classes in competition.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Exactly. It's just it creates a whole different idea. But again, the true variance idea is that like you're going to test for truly different characteristics, truly different.
Yeah.
Each event, and it's not just going to always come down to endurance or local muscular endurance and specifically just upper body strength. It's not going to come down to that.
Yeah.
And if you go through the events and you do them, you're gonna truly experience what variance is.
And I think it's really great idea for competitors. Try your competition just to feel the difference, and maybe for girls especially.
I think especially for girls, because they're gonna understand what it truly means to go hard.
Yeah. They won't be limited by just upper body strength, let's say.
You'll be limited by this.
Just by your brain. Your mind.
You're not gonna want to go faster.
And thanks, perfect.
Good.
I think this topic we could even discuss even more in future, because there's a lot of potential, in my opinion, in that. Like how to create great tests such that every athlete has the same those responses possible.
Great.